Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for another edition of Digital Soul Presents. I am very excited for this next episode. I have a dear friend of mine who has a very, very special project coming out like in a few weeks. It's a project in the works. I'm very excited about. He's very excited about. The public is very excited about. This brother's a good brother, director, entrepreneur, photographer, co-host of the Apollonia Studio 6 also as well, and the author of the new book, Mothership Connected, Mr. Seth Neblett. How are you doing, my brother?
I'm good. I'm good. How you doing?
I'm hanging in there, doing good, man. So good to see you, man.
Good. Great to see you as always.
Yeah, thank you so much for stopping through. And how you been? How you been?
I've been good, man. I can't complain too much. Just hustling, getting this book out and, getting book signings scheduled and all of that good stuff. So just the hustle of a new release of something, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And first things first, I saw that we got a book date, and I say we like we wrote the book together. But there's a date. I saw October 1st. I saw there's a starting date. We'll talk a little bit about that date coming up there.
Yeah, well, the actual release of the book is September 30th, but the day after, October 1st, we'll be having the launch party, book signing event, I guess it would be considered at a Book Soup here in West Hollywood, which is a pretty famous bookstore in West Hollywood. So yeah, Book Soup in West Hollywood on Sunset at 7 o'clock. We will be having an event, book signing. I'm gonna have a moderator there. There's probably gonna be some Q&A and all that sort of good stuff. So yeah, it should be fun. And that's the first of a few. After that one, I go to Miami, and then I go to Atlanta, and then it looks like I'll be going to Nashville, and I'll be going to Memphis, and then I go to New Orleans and Detroit, and so it's a lot going on.
Making the rounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's up, man. And I know the roots of this book, man. It's been a long time coming. I know it's been at least 20 plus years of research and talking to different people and just all kinds of stuff. But it doesn't just begin there because uh, person like myself, I usually say funk found me, but
Hmm.
for you, you were actually born into the funk
Yep.
with mom being the first lady of funk, Maya Franklin, and then pops, Mr. Nate Neblett, also the founder of the Nightlighters, not also known as New Birth, played with many legends as well.
Hmm.
Talk about your roots growing up with two parents in the business, actually grounded in funk.
It was very interesting because I was primarily with my mother and my mother's family, and my mother comes from a family of politicians and union representatives and real powerful union folks. So it was a kind of an interesting contrast between having grandparents who were really my main caretakers, having grandparents that were very involved in the civil rights movement, had marched with Martin Luther King,
Oh wow.
all of those sorts of things. And a lot of this is covered in the book as well.
Yeah.
And having a mother that was a hippie, that was, connected with George Clinton and Funkadelic even before I was born. So when I got in there, she had already been recording stuff with Funkadelic, and they had already been a part of our lives, a part of our family. George and his fiance and his daughter lived with our family before I was even born. So yeah, so I came right into it.
Yeah, absolutely. When was at a young age? How far back do you remember? Like you finally realized what your mom was into as far as like the status of what it was.
Um, Actually, in my book, The Prelude is a personal account about me
Hmm.
at 7 years old. going to my very first Parliament Funkadelic concert in 1978. It was the Flashlight Tour. And my first time seeing my mother on a big stage. And, by that time, they had already done the Pleasure Principle album. It hadn't been released yet, but it had been recorded. So I tell that whole story in the prelude about the first time that I realized, what my mother did and that this was a really big deal. And I didn't understand that it was a big deal, being 7 years old, but I understood that everything that was going on around me, being in this arena and seeing this ship come down and all that sort of stuff was a big deal. This is,
Yeah,
yeah. So,
that's funny.
yeah. So seven, 6 or 7. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very interesting, interesting. And then as far as the roots of the book, I know it just didn't happen overnight. You didn't just wake up and say, I'm going to write this book. Like I know there was a lot that led up to that. And I know a lot of people like myself that, that just love the group, the outlets, the family tree. Of course, if you're in the know, but then there's a lot of people that don't know and that need to know about the history of what, the roots of the different women, and even the musicians in the camp as well. Uh, at what point in your life did you finally say, you know what, the women's side finally needs to be told and it needs to be heard? When did it finally just say, I need to do this?
Well, it really wasn't my intention to do this. I didn't seek out to write a book on my mother and Parlet and the Brides. I wrote it really out of necessity.
Hmm.
We had, I had been working with my mother and some of the Brides Funkenstein and some of the Parlets in trying to institute a reunion since the mid 90s. It actually all started when Polygram in 1994 released The Best of Parlet.
Right.
When that came out, I made an effort, myself and Cheryl James, their former road manager, who I was still extremely close to, made an effort to find Jeanette Washington, who nobody had seen in 20 years, pretty much, and Shirley Hayden. We were also in touch with Debbie, but Debbie at the time was still going through some challenges. So we knew that we couldn't institute a reunion with Debbie. But
For sure.
Shirley, in a default way, unfortunately, outside of the Pleasure Principle album, Debbie didn't get a chance to be a partlet. Outside of recording the first album, she never performed as a partlet or anything like that. When Parlet hit the stage for the very first time, it was Malia, Jeanette, and Shirley. And Shirley, pretty much fulfilled all of Debbie's duties for Pleasure Principle from, the release on. She did all the press, she did all the performing.
Okay.
So, so we tried to do something with the three of them in Japan, actually. And this was something that was brought by Donnie Sterling, who used to be engaged to my mother, who at that time was living in Japan and had a pretty good uh, working dossier out there. And so they had talked, and he said, "Hey, you think you can get the girls together and you guys can do a Parlet reunion?" And so uh, that's how I even came into this whole management, whatever. That started at
Okay.
23 in 94 with Parlet being the first thing.
Okay.
And so we tried to do that for a couple years and we really didn't have any success. So I made the suggestion, let's see if we can get the brides to, come about and do like a combo tour. That's where that whole she-funk thing was born.
Yeah.
Okay. And um, and I must say that uh, the person who actually came up with that term she-funk was a artist in England by the name of Howard Priestley. Howard Priestley had done the artwork for my mother's Funk Interceptor album. And Howard Howard, Blaze Schmitter, Marcel Visser, all those kind of guys were trying to assist me in getting gigs for Parlet and the Brides overseas. And Howard, being a artist, had actually rendered, and I still have it somewhere. He had actually done a rendering of a tour poster, and on that tour poster, he put the She-Funk tour. That was the first time we had ever heard that terminology of She-Funk.
Yeah.
So if anybody thinks anything different, that's where it came from. It came from Howard Priestley in 1994. And at that time, I contacted Lynn Mabry. She didn't really have any interest. You know, she was doing her thing with Sheila E. and doing other things with Bette Midler, and she was doing really big stuff. Contacted Dawn Silva. Dawn Silva was interested and contacted Sheila Horn. Sheila Horn was kind of interested, you know, but she was kind of like in and out, in and out, in and out. So as we're trying to make this happen, the Mothership Reconnection Tour is announced. Okay. Mothership Reconnection Tour is announced. Myself, Shirley Hayden, and Cheryl James get in a car and drive up to George's ranch in Brooklyn, Michigan, when he was living in Brooklyn. And George, to our surprise, was there. So we had had a conversation with George. He had said that, you know, he had gotten this record deal with Sony and that they were going to do this whole Mothership Reconnection tour and they wanted to do everything, you know, like 20 years ago. And he had asked, it was funny because he had asked us that, you know, are you guys still in contact with Jeanette? Because he was aware of the Parlet reunion uh,
Okay.
idea. He was, as a matter of fact, when we got Jeanette and Debbie, I'm sorry, Jeanette and Shirley to do it, George actually signed an agreement with me and Cheryl
Okay.
James. They could perform as Parlet
Okay.
with no, you know, with no issue. So he was aware that we had been in touch with Jeanette, and he hadn't seen Jeanette since she left in 1980.
Wow.
So you know, he said, just hold on tight, you know, and all of this is, you know, this is going to happen. We're going to get this tour together. Well, some things happen. You'll read in the books. There is a couple of pages about the 96 Reconnection Tour. Um, but what ended up happening out of that was that George made a decision that the Brides of Funkenstein this time was going to be Sheila and Dawn. So, you know, as the fans know, Sheila and Dawn did end up going out and doing some shows on the Reconnection tour. Parlet did not. You'll get more into why when you read the book, but Parlet did not. Even though my mother did do some spot shows in certain areas. So, so yeah, so you know, kind of this was going on, and then I attempted to do a She-Funk show, the first one in Detroit. And it was supposed to be my mom, Dawn, Jeanette, and Shirley. Mom fell out, and it was always something. You know, it was always something going on. And then we were supposed to do another show, and actually, the Detroit show you can find on YouTube. It's on YouTube. Somebody had
Yeah.
Bush.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm singing background, as a matter of fact. But and then we tried to do a show at the Wetlands with the Roots, which was like a year after, and Jeanette and Dawn didn't come. I mean, yeah, Jeanette and Dawn didn't come. So it was just, it's always been
Always
stuff
something.
that has kept, you know, kept it from happening. A lot of it is just that old P-Funk residue, you know what I mean, that continues to
Yeah.
fester. But yeah, so anyway, I know I'm long-winded. I'm a Gemini, so bear with
Yeah. Absolutely. Take your time, brother. Take your time.
So anyway, the whole way that the book situation happened was back in 2003. I had met a director through my mom's attorney who was a guy by the name of Paul Justman. Paul Justman had done a film called Standing in the Shadows of Motown. Paul Justman was interested in doing his second film after I flew to LA and kind of pitched it to him. He was interested in doing his second film about the women of Parliament Funkadelic. He thought it would be a good follow up to the Funk Brothers, you know, like
Wow.
Funk Brothers in the first film, Women of
Yeah.
Parliament Funkadelic in the second, because it was in the same vein, kind of, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had been working with Paul and having meetings with Paul. At that time, he was still doing a lot of stuff with Standing in the Shadows. I was living in Detroit at the time, and he was flying into Detroit like maybe once a month, once every 2 months. So we were, getting together, and I was telling him stories, about just my childhood, stories of being a part of this whole thing. And he tried for about a year or two to get a documentary project, and it wasn't happening. And he said, well, Seth, we couldn't get funding for Standing in the Shadows until we had a book.
Mm,
So you may want to do a book. This is, mind you, we're talking 2004.
mm,
He says, you may want to do a book. And if you can do a book, maybe we can make a documentary happen if we have a book. So that became the journey of the book. I was not originally going to be the writer. We had looked at other writers to write it because I wasn't a writer. You know
yeah,
what
absolutely.
I mean? And that didn't happen. We did get some interest from a big agent in New York uh, that was interested in it, and she needed a book treatment. And as a matter of fact, myself and Don Silva wrote the book treatment in 2004 that went to this woman. Didn't happen. So around 2006, actually, I started probably around 2005. It was like, we were still talking to Paul. We still wanted this to happen. So I just started interviewing people, doing some things. You know, Dawn, even back then, told me that, she had planned to write her own memoir.
Right.
And so I focused on the She Funk book, but I still hadn't dedicated myself 100% to it yet. That changed when moved out here to LA 2006, and me and my mother had dinner with Bootsy. Bootsy was in town and he was visiting, and we had met Bootsy over at a friend of the Funks, a woman by the name of Candy Bell. She's no longer with us, but Candy was an unbelievable chef. So
Mm,
anytime Bootsy would come to LA, he would have dinner, at Candy's house. So this particular night, he asked me and my mom, meet me over Candy's. We're gonna have dinner, blah blah blah. So I was just expressing my frustration about, we're trying to do this book, and it's just been this and it's that, and it's one thing after the other, and we just can't catch a break.
mm.
And Bootsy said, why don't you write it? And I said, well, I'm not a writer. He said, you're smart. He said, you know the story because you lived it. He said, and then on top of it, people know that they can't pull shit over on you. They know they can't bullshit you because they know that you know the truth.
Boom.
So you just write it.
There it is.
And from that particular night, I went on and just chugged forward as the writer, never written anything in my life, and just started conducting interviews.
Mm. What,
And
what was your first, like, do you remember your first baby step? Like, was it, what was going through your mind where you was like, okay, what am I going to do first? Like, what was your first step? Like the initial thing?
well, the women were easy because I
Mm,
had pretty much, that was something that, we had been talking for years about stories and things like that. So I knew pretty much the women's stuff.
yeah.
Um, I think for me, my next step was trying to include people that I knew were important to the story. So one of the first people that I interviewed, I want to say, was Bernie Worrell.
Mm,
He was one of the first people I interviewed. I interviewed Bernie. Let's see. It started with the women. Like I said, we had interviews um, with the and when I say the women, I mean the initial women when this first started were Lynn, Dawn, Malia, Jeanette, Washington, Debbie, and Shirley. That was the first nucleus. And then also Cheryl James, who was uh, the road manager and was kind of like a conduit for
Yeah.
all of them, not just the women, but also the men, because she had not just managed Parlet and managed the bride, she had also managed tours with Parliament Funkadelic. So she was a very integral part of it, Cheryl was. And, we had, there were other business people that I had talked to. I had talked to a woman, Andy Thomas, who uh, uh, managed the brides for some time in 1978 and some of 1979. I started talking to some of the Parlet um, musicians like Gordon Carlton. And, but Bernie, I think Bernie might have been like one of the first, I don't want to say main guys, but you know what I mean? Kind of like bigger nucleuses in the P-Funk world that I spoke with. And then after that, George was the second. And George gave me, actually, he interviewed for me two or three times and gave me a lot of information. You know, George was a storyteller, so he really gave me a lot of stories. I had probably about 3 hours with George and
Wow.
asking questions about different things. So George gave me a lot. Um, uh, and then from there, I just started interviewing everybody. I interviewed Blackbird. Let's see. Interviewed Gary Scheider.
Mm.
He gave me a lot for the book. I interviewed Gary probably around 2008. Interviewed Gary, interviewed George, interviewed Sly Stone around 2008. Uh, oof. I interviewed Blackbird. I interviewed Gary Hudgens. I interviewed Jerome Ali. I interviewed a lot of the business people. I interviewed Brenda Adams, who ran the office here in LA, World Funk headquarters. I interviewed Leslie Vocino, who ran the funk office in Detroit. I interviewed Ron Brimbury. I interviewed Ronald Dunbar, who gave me a whole lot. I interviewed Rob Middleman. I can't think of his first name right now from Backstage Management.
Mm.
Um, and so I just really wanted to, and that's just some. I mean, I interviewed Liz Bishop, who's Barbarella's mom. Anybody that I thought was intricate to the Parlet bride story. Um, and pretty much everybody was willing to talk. Everybody was willing to talk to me, and even the other women that were parlets and brides. I extended the invitation to interview them, meaning Janice Evans, Jeanette Magruder, uh, Gwen Dozier, who had a short stint in Parlet. Um, and, for their own reasons, they just kind of decided that they didn't want to be a part. And, Sheila Horn, Sheila kind of came in and out, even like with the
Yeah.
She-Funk thing. Like Sheila was in for a minute and Sheila was out. And Sheila was in and Sheila was out. So, that's kind of how the formation of it happened. But what I wanted to do more than anything else is number one, I didn't want this to be a hit piece on George.
Right.
You know, I didn't want it because the thing is yes, management did some jacked up stuff. There are people that are talking about a lot of the stuff that they did, and when I say the people, I mean not just the women, but a lot of the guys in the band, talking
Absolutely.
about their experience. I interviewed Donnie Sterling. Donnie gave me a lot. So, people had what they had to say. But my thing is if I made it all about George, then it's not about the women anymore.
Hmm.
And the other thing was that in talking about and having these people talk about maybe the things that they thought management did wrong, there was also a lot of people that talked about the great things that George did and management did. And those were things that I thought were just as important, you know. So to give you an example, it wasn't just about, okay, well, we did this tour and, George and the manager ran off with all the money. It was also that George created George and backstage management, at least from what I've told in this book, created this strategy where George monopolized the record industry with the same band, with one band, and just splitting them off into sectors and getting all these different record deals. That's genius. I don't know if it was legal, but that's genius.
It is.
You know what I mean?
It is.
And how he set the blueprint for the Rick Jameses, for the Princes, and for the,
Hmm.
George set the blueprint for that.
Absolutely.
So I couldn't have one without the other. You know what I mean? And, you know, I wanted things to be balanced. I wanted things to where the women's voices are the biggest voices, definitely. They're the biggest voices in this book, but also there are these satellite voices in this book that were around, that knew things. And one thing that I can tell you is that everybody pretty much that I interviewed, even the women themselves, I would say, well, I interviewed Leslie and she said this. And they were like, what? I've never heard that in my life. Or I interviewed Ron Dunbar and Ron Dunbar said this. So there's a lot of discovery that when this book was done, as some of the women were reading, like Shirley and Lynn, they were like, I'm learning stuff about my own career that I didn't know. They were learning the inner workings of what was going on in Thing
Yeah.
Incorporated because they weren't just seeing it from their eyes, they were also seeing it from the business people's eyes and the road managers and the people, the people that ran the offices so it's it's the story of the women of Parliament Funkadelic, but it essentially kind of became the story of Parliament Funkadelic in its heyday. Because this book, one thing that I did make a conscious effort in doing is doing what I knew the fans were going to want, which pretty much is 75% of this book is during the Mothership era from 1976 to 1981, 82, 83. That
Yeah.
whole from Mothership Connection to Atomic Dog is the majority, 75% of this book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, I know that that's what the fans really are curious about. And I had written so much that, when I took it to the publisher, they were like, you got to shave 100 pages off of this.
Whoa.
So there's a
Way.
100 pages that didn't make the book.
Ah.
So,
Mm.
so maybe, you know, knock on wood, if this book is successful, maybe the publisher will come back and say, let's do an expanded edition and put those 100
Yeah.
back.
Oh man, how do you cut off 100? How do you cut down to 100 pages? Oh, that's so hard to do.
It was hard because basically
Oh,
it was from, I'll say the last 5 chapters I had to condense into 2 chapters.
oh, oh man.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
last 5 chapters I had to condense into 2 chapters.
Mm.
And there were some stories that were during it that that were great stories, like the story of my mother and Chaka Khan about to beat somebody up in the girls' restroom and a whole bunch of great stories.
Can you tell that story right now, real briefly?
Okay. So my mother and Shaka were friends in the 70s. My mother, Shaka, and Taka.
Okay.
We're all good friends in the 70s. In 1976, this is before Parlet. My mother was living out here in LA and she was doing gigs on the Sunset Strip. She was doing gigs at she was working for a guy by the name of Eddie Nash. Eddie Nash owned a lot of clubs in LA. He owned the Starwood, he owned the Paradise Ballroom, he owned a club called the Sold Out, which became Club Lingerie on the Sunset Strip. They were all owned by Eddie Nash. Eddie Nash was a gangster. Okay. Eddie Nash is also the guy that, if you are familiar with the story of the Wonderland murders,
Yeah.
Eddie Nash is the gangster that John Holmes and those guys tried to set up. Okay. So this is who my mother's boss was
Mhm.
right before Parlet. This is in the book too, before Parlet. She went to see Shaka. Well, it wasn't Shaka. She actually went to go see the Ohio Players and Graham Central Station at a theater here in LA in 1976. She got there and Shaka showed up with Billy Preston. Okay. It's the first time my mother had seen Shaka in about 2, 3 years. So, uh, and Shaka has confirmed this story too. I'm telling it because Shaka confirmed it. So, my mom and Shaka, go into the ladies' room and, they freshen it up and probably doing other stuff,
Mm.
enjoying themselves. And this girl, I'm not going to say her name, but this girl, lady, came in the bathroom and started going off on Shaka.
Mm.
Like, really just like berating her and just out of nowhere, you bitch and you blah, blah. So,
Mm.
my mother tries to get in between and tries to say, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing?" Now, at the time, we're talking about Shaka's like maybe Sweet Thing is out, so she's
Yeah.
big, big deal. And so, mom is trying to separate. Hey, don't do this because Shaka from Chicago and Shaka might
Yeah.
beat your ass. 'Cause she's like, don't talk to her like that. Don't say that to her. And according to Shaka, Shaka filled this in. Shaka said, and then the girl said something to your mama. And your mama said, oh, no, no, you don't want none of this. You got
Now you done mess with the wrong one.
okay. You don't want Chicago and Detroit
Yeah, Detroit.
on that ass.
No doubt.
So the woman ended up leaving and going down the hall, fuck that bitch. Blah, talking about Shaka, right? And my mom looked at her and said, what just happened? Why would she do that? What happened? And Shaka said, I don't even know that bitch like that. I don't even know her like that. But the reason mom told that story in the book was she said that was the first time she had witnessed what she called bitch shit, which was like jealousy and envy. And the only reason that this woman came in there and acted like that towards her is because she was jealous, because Shaka came in the place. And when Shaka came into place, it was all about Shaka. And that was the reason that she had told that story. She had actually told that story because it connected to a story about when she first came back to Parliament Funkadelic. And Debbie and Jeanette were not getting along with Lynn and Dawn. And it was like they were bumping heads. And, mom kind of came into it and she said, I came into all of this bitch shit. And I just walked into it. I wasn't part of none of it. And I just walked into the shit. So that was the reason of her telling that story. But the
Yeah.
story ended up having to come out because it was a great story, but it was kind of like a branch. It was kind of like a
Yeah.
satellite story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I would have loved to have kept it, you know,
Right, right.
and maybe it'll come back,
Yeah, hopefully, like you said, there is I think if there's an expanded edition, but I think this book, man, and I don't want to jinx, but I think this book is going to be very, very successful because I think, like you said, Bootsy called it out years and decades ago. He says, man, you you know. You were there from the beginning. You know, your mom is the pioneer, one of the architects. She
Yeah.
was the one that even is the one responsible for connecting Bootsy with Dr. Funkenstein. Talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that story. A lot of people are not aware of that.
Well, what I'm so thankful for in this book is not only is it my mother telling the story of how she found Bootsy, but it's Bootsy telling the story in depth about how she found him.
Mm,
And Frankie Cash telling the story in depth. And what most people that do know the story, they think that it was just kind of a thing where Malia saw these guys and picked up the phone and said, "Hey, George, I got these guys you need to meet."
mm,
And that it was just that one and done. But it wasn't. The house guests had lived with us for months before they ever met George. And I mean, literally, my mother met Bootsy and in Toledo, Ohio. There's been all these different kind of like Bootsy tells a version, George tells a version, and then mom has a version. Um, and her version is that the house guests were playing behind a singer by the name of Gloria Taylor, who was had regional hits in the Midwest, and they were playing at a theater called the Sepia Theater, and the house guests were her backing band. Now, why I tend to believe this is I was actually able to find a flyer from the show in Toledo at the Sepia
wow.
Theater that says Gloria Taylor featuring the house guests.
Wow.
And so mom was there. She was singing at the time. She was a solo artist. She was with a group of artists that were called Afro Artists International, which was run by a guy who was the former assistant to Berry Gordy. And also another one of the groups that was a part of Afro Artists International was Roz Ryan. If you know the from Amen,
Amen. Yeah.
Broadway, and
Yeah.
all that, she used to be the lead singer of it. Well, she was a solo singer, but she had a group at one time called Roz and the Realistics. And so they were all part of this Afro International thing. And so mom approached, she was looking at Bootsy and looking at the house guests, and she was like, I don't know why they with her. You know what I mean? But these are funkadelics. Oh, what's going on? Why they with her? And so she approached them and, asked them, do you know George Clinton? They were like, nope. And she was like, well, he's a really good friend of mine. He's like my family. I think you need to meet him.
Mm,
And so a couple weeks later, she drove to Cincinnati. She had my grandparents had a station wagon. I was an infant. I was a little boy. I might have been 3 months, 4 months old. And she drove up to Cincinnati. The house guests threw their stuff in the back of the station wagon. And this was Bootsy, Catfish, uh, Frankie, Chicken, Gunnels, and there may have been a couple of the other ones too. I think it might have been the whole band. And I was laying in, and this is Bootsy telling the story. My mother had me laying in the passenger seat, swaddled up in the passenger seat, and he had to pick me up, and he had never held a baby in his life. And he tells this story every time I see him. I saw him about 2 months ago, and he said, you the first baby I ever held. I said, I know. He likes to tell that story.
so cool.
So he said, you were in that passenger seat. He said, and your mama had to show me how to hold you because I didn't know how to hold a baby. I was scared to hold a baby.
Mm,
He said, so you were the first baby I ever held. And he said, I held you in my arms, and she drove us back to Detroit. And they lived with my grandmother my grandmother had a business in Detroit, a specialty advertising business. And actually one of her clients was Westbound Records.
mm,
So she did a lot of the merchandise for like the Ohio Players, Funkadelic, that kind of stuff. And over her office, she had apartment. She had a big apartment that my mother was living in. The house guests came and moved in. So it was my mother, me, her and my dad were kind of separated by this time. So it was
Okay.
her, me as a baby, and the house guests, Bootsy, Catfish, Frankie. And Frankie told me in my interviewing with him, he said, you know, we lived with your mother twice because when she moved into a house on a street called LaSalle Boulevard, and they moved over there with her. So the introduction to George didn't happen for a couple of months because I want to say Funkadelic might have been over in the UK on tour. And mom and George had a friend who had a nightclub called the Soul Expression in Detroit, Woody Soul Expression. And my mom got the house guests basically a showcase, a gig there. But really, what it was a showcase so George could see them. So the book really goes in depth about that whole meeting and what George saw and how he saw it and what happened after. And yeah, so she's pretty much set up a showcase for the house guests. They performed. George saw them, told her to bring them to his house the next day. And that's it. They were Funkadelics after that.
It was on and cracking it.
Mhm. That was 1971. They were Funkadelics after that.
Yeah, that's
Hmm.
awesome, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you say is your favorite Parlet album?
Pleasure Principle.
The first one, yeah.
Yeah.
Classic.
And you know why? Because Pleasure Principle was done with intention, meaning that George really had intention with Pleasure Principle. Everything that happened after that, he was either really not the one that was doing a lot of the production. You know, he really gave it to Dunbar, to Ron Dunbar to do. But Pleasure Principle was the Parlet album he did with intention. That was him saying, "This is what I want Parlet to be, and this is what I want Parlet to sound like." And you can just tell, I mean, by the quality of the stuff. It's like,
Yeah,
you know, you got the Detroit Symphony Orchestra
yeah.
playing. I mean, you
Great.
can just tell by the
Yeah,
quality of it, you know, that was Pleasure Principle was his intention of what he really wanted Parlet to be.
yeah. Yeah. So,
Mhm.
your favorite Brides album?
Texas, probably.
Yeah.
Texas.
Just the song alone.
Yeah, Texas, Texas.
Yeah,
And I
that's
love
all.
Funk Walk. You know, Disco to
Yeah,
Go is ridiculous. Amorous, you know, Disco to Go, Amorous, Just Like You. Those are favorites of mine. But as a whole, I gotta say Never by Texas because it was just,
yeah,
I mean, holding you responsible, all of that stuff. And then my mother sang on the whole album except for one
yeah,
song.
yeah.
The only song she didn't sing on was Didn't Mean to Fall in Love. She sang on all the rest of it. So, yeah, Texas.
What would be your favorite Maya Franklin performance on record?
Probably the end of Pika Groove.
Mm,
Yep. Probably the end of Pika Groove. And that was totally spontaneous and it was done in one
mm.
take. It was
That'd be,
totally spontaneous and done in one take.
yeah.
Hmm.
I'm gonna tell you a quick story since you said that, bro. Okay, I never told anybody this story.
Hmm.
Trumbipulation is actually the very first Parliament album I ever owned as a kid.
Really? Really?
Yeah, so I used to. When I was growing up, I was a DJ, and
Hmm.
then I went to school. In elementary school, there was another kid named his name was Jason. He
Hmm.
was also a DJ, so I would go around the corner to his house,
Hmm.
and we would exchange records and whatnot. So one day I went to his house. I just was, I was about maybe 10 or 11 years old. I'm talking 83, 84, somewhere around there.
Hmm.
And I'm just, of course, Atomic Dog, I know that, but I'm just figuring out, who these groups are, the P-Funk All-Stars, Parliament, and I'm, really starting to get into it. I go to his house one day, I'm sitting there, he goes to the bathroom, I decide to go look through his records.
Hmm.
And I see this Casablanca label, and I immediately, I'm thinking it's a Donna Summer record, is what I
Hmm.
thought it was. So I pulled it up, it's Parliament Trumpetulation. I'm like, oh shit.
Hmm.
Like, so I'm reading the titles, New Do Review, Pika Groove, and Let's
Hmm.
Play House. I'm like, I immediately I was like, can I borrow this record? And he said,
Hmm.
yeah. So he had no cover. So I had the record with no cover for the longest time. So I never even knew what the cover looked like.
Okay.
So so eventually I had that album and borrowed it from him.
Hmm.
And I never gave it back. He never wanted it back.
Hmm.
So fast forward, that was mid '80s. So the conversion to CDs, I think Polygram bought the rights or something at that time.
Okay.
When they
Polygram.
started, yeah, I think you remember that too. When they started reissuing all those old Parliament albums and
Yep.
everything. And this is
Yep.
like 1990 or 89 or 90.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like early 90s. Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere around there. So I was like around in high school right about that time. And when the CD finally came out from Trumbipulation, that
Hmm.
was the first CD I wanted to go get
Okay.
out of the Parliament collection because it was the first one I had. And so
Yeah.
it became my favorite at that time.
Yeah.
And so when I finally got the CD, I'm in high school. The portable Walkman, the whole deal.
Mhm.
I would fall asleep with that album in my ear every night,
Wow.
every morning. I would say 4:30, 5 o'clock.
Mhm.
I would somehow consciously while I was asleep, it would get right in the middle of peak of groove, right before Maya's part starts. I
Mhm.
would wake up
Mhm.
and I would just fresh 5 in the morning. I would listen to that part
Yeah.
of that song. I'm a mover, sir, and
Yeah.
I'll move that ended up being my favorite song all through high school. But of course, at that time, I never knew who that was.
Yeah. Most people didn't.
Yeah, but just out of, as a kid, being that, that being my first Parliament album, no
Mhm.
cover, no credits. I didn't know, other than I knew George Clinton, a bunch of people, were on the record. But yeah, that ended up being my favorite song as a kid, a favorite album, and one of the first albums I had by them.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have an affinity to that album because a lot of that, I was there for a lot of those vocals
Mm,
for that particular album. I mean, I had been in the studio before and I have witnessed since my mother came, since my mother became a Parlet.
yeah.
There were certain sessions that I had been on. I think I might have been in either some of Bop Gun or some of Flashlight.
Okay.
Might have been on a little bit of One Nation, um, maybe some of Freak of the Week. But when you're young, most of the time it happened really late at night. So I was asleep on the couch in the studio. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm a little kid. I'm like 7, 8
Right,
years
right.
old. I'm asleep. But by the time they got to that one,
You were a little older.
I have very clear recollections of vocals for like Let's Play House and Long Way Around. And I mean, that I was there for. New Do Review. I mean, stuff that
Yeah.
I witnessed, myself. And with Pika Groove, because we do talk about that, George actually talks about it in the book. And he said, he said that happened. Your mom's solo was spontaneous. And he said that happened because of Sly. Sly Stone said, let Malia go in there by herself and let her just go. And that's what they did. And it was
Yeah.
one take. And they kept it. So yeah, I have fond memories to that album.
Yeah, it's a trip because I know over the course of the years I talked to different people, and that album it's mixed as
Hmm.
far as the response amongst people I talk to. Some people dig it, some people don't. It's like it wasn't all that. I think more people appreciate it now, but I know a lot of people that, of course, they prefer Clones or Motor
Yeah.
Booty, those albums, of course. But a
Yeah.
lot of people I think kind of overlook Trump Population in a lot of areas. There's some really good shit happening on that album.
Yeah, and a lot of that probably has to do with the fact that it wasn't a hit. You know what I mean? It
Yeah,
was, that Agony of Defeat did something,
yeah.
but and of course, as you know, Agony of Defeat was a Sterling Silver Starship song.
Mm.
Um, um, but there were no real big hits on Trimbipulation. So I think because there were no big hits, really, people didn't give it the attention that they could have. But I mean, when you think about it, all the heavy hitters are on it, Junie and everybody's on it. So yeah,
Yeah,
no,
great record.
I think that it got slept on.
Yeah, I still do to this day. It's a very slept on album. I truly dig it still to this day.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But one of the things I admire about you, man, that I love is that you take care of the women, not only with, this brand new book that's coming out, The Mothership Connected,
Hmm.
but as I mentioned in the beginning, you're also the co-host of Apollonia Studio 6,
Hmm.
which you've been doing for a few years. You also handled some business affairs and management for the OG Mary Jane girls, not to be confused with Maxie and Cherry,
Yep.
them, Vesta, Chaka Khan. The list goes on. Mickey Howard. There's so
Hmm.
many beautiful women that I've admired and loved over the years. You
Yeah.
actually take care of them and make sure that their business is taken care of, their music is sounding good, photos are good.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about getting into the process of doing that.
Well, as I said before, the P-Funk women were my training ground,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak, for all of that. Malia was the teacher. Me dealing with my mom was the teacher of all of that, of the way that I know how to do, how I know how to work with women when it comes to business. Um, Seeing the way that she was treated and the other women were treated uh, makes me sensitive to some of the things that, these women go through. And so once I had moved here to LA, like I said, I had done pretty much just working with Parlet and brides members until I moved out here to LA. Then when I moved out here to LA, where mom was, I started meeting people, kind of through her, or she had affiliations with people that, I think I met Maxie first, the Mary Jane girls, and she was at a time where she wasn't really performing anymore with the Mary Jane girls, and there really wasn't any Mary Jane girls. Everybody was kind of scattered. JoJo was doing her own thing, and then you had the Estates version that were doing their thing, and she wanted to put the Mary Jane girls back together. And so what I did was I contacted everybody. I contacted JoJo, I contacted Candy, I contacted Corvette, I contacted Sherry, I contacted everybody because our intention was that if we were going to do this, we were going to do it right,
Yeah,
you know. And everybody, for their own reasons, didn't want to do it, except for the exception of Sherry. And so, we had to kind of make a decision on what we were going to do, and we felt that if we had 50% of the original group, you know what I mean? Of course, we wanted JoJo specifically if we could have had her, but at that time, she was not really in a place where she wanted to do anything with any of the girls. So, because she wanted to be JoJo and she wanted to do JoJo. So, um, we started getting girls that not really, I won't say replacements, but fit the role. Because as you know, Mary Jane girls were all roles. You had the street girl, you had the leather queen, you had the valley girl, and then you had the glamour girl. So we got a new glamour girl and we got a new street girl, and we started going out as original Mary Jane girls, Maxie and Sherry. And that has not been without opposition. That has not been without challenges. Uh, you know, Interestingly enough, most of the people that are challenging are the people that weren't even Mary Jane girls. That's another story. But but um, yeah. So it started with them, and then I had made some friendships with some of the women that were involved with Prince. Really, Jill Jones, Sue Ann Carwell, who was a dear friend of my mother's. Sue Ann was,
yeah,
and Jill, and through Jill, I met Apollonia, and me and her just got on like instant. It was like
yeah,
instant, and so as me and as of course, when I met her, actually, I met her. We were going to the service to Vanity's memorial. That was the first time I'd ever met Apollonia. And she went with us, me and Jill, Jill's cousin, and Apollonia. We all drove to San Jose to go to Vanity's. Memorial.
Mm.
And we saw Susan and Brenda there. That was the first time Apollonia had seen them since Purple Rain. And um, then, of course, as you know, 45 days after that, well, actually, that weekend we saw Prince because he had done a piano and a microphone in
Yeah.
Oakland the next night. And he had his management team contact Apollonia because he heard that the girls were in town and he wanted them to come to the show. So we stayed another day, and that's what we did. And so we got a chance to see him. I got a chance to meet him face to face for the first time. It was because even though my mother and him had been friends for decades, I had never met him face to face.
Mm.
So I was able to get a chance to meet him and to talk to him, and we got a chance to see him. Of course, we didn't know that 45 days later he'd be gone. But
So you met him 45 days before he passed.
yeah,
Wow.
we saw him on February 28th.
Mm.
He was gone April 21st. So um, yeah, so after that, so that was an interesting time to kind of come into Apollonia's life.
Absolutely.
Because of
Yeah.
all of, first losing Vanity, which was interesting because she even talked about it that, even though there was always this, what was perceived as a rivalry between them.
Mhm.
And, even though they did have some rough patches when Vanity was in her addiction, um, you know, that was like her sister. That was like they were almost simultaneous kind of in a way.
Yeah.
So when Vanity died, that hit her, that hit Apollonia really hard. And so then of course when Prince passed away, not long after that, it was just like, that was the shock. That was the shock. But I can't say, that we could tell that something wasn't right when we saw him, especially them, because they knew him for
Yeah.
years and years and years and years and years. You know that that there were some things that he was, you know, battling with or trying to cope with. That's a better way to put it. There were some things that they were trying to cope that he was trying to cope with, and me even as a new person, as a new, not really a newcomer to Prince, because I was a diehard fan, but a person that really got a chance to meet him for the first time. When I saw him, I was a little startled, because I could tell he just didn't look well. It was like it wasn't what I expected. And if you look at the pictures from the last days, he was really skinny and
He's already a small guy already. So
yeah, and
yeah.
he was, gaunt, and
Yeah.
it wasn't great. It didn't look great, but I got a chance to spend time with him, and I told him who my mother was, and that like changed everything. It's like you're Malia's son. I'm like, yeah, I'm Malia Franklin's son, and so I treasure that.
Yeah.
That of all of those years, because I remember I was a Prince fan before my mother was a Prince fan. I remember being a Prince fan. I remember buying I Want to Be Your Lover with the Farrah Fawcett flip. And my mother was like, who is that? And I
Let me
remember,
tell you that that's the first Prince album I ever owned. Coincidentally, that album is the first one.
man. And then when I bought Dirty Mind,
Hmm.
and I was like 9,
Yeah,
and I
it
was
was
singing
over.
Head, she was not having it. She was not having it.
What are you singing?
What are you singing, sister, about incest? What are you doing? I don't know. I
Yeah,
just
of
know I like
course.
the song,
Mhm.
But she was like, "Oh no, oh hell no, we can't have this going." Now, mind you, they were singing "Ick a Prick and Iron Pussy."
Right, right. It could prick a non pussy.
I can do it, but he can't do it.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, it was. So I was a fan, and I
Yeah.
was the one telling her he's the.
Yeah. This
You need
is
to watch
the
out for
one.
him.
This is the one right here.
Yeah, you need to watch out for this one right here.
Hmm.
And so, so I had been a fan of Prince and The Time and Vanity Six because
Yeah,
I was living in Detroit, and Detroit was one of the cities that would break them.
yeah, that is well known.
Detroit
Hmm.
broke them. Detroit was one of those cities that would play the B-sides, would play all the album cuts that nobody else would play.
Hmm.
It was one of the cities where all the guys were, dressing up like Morris and dressing up like Prince, and the girls dressing up like Vanity or
Yeah,
Apollonia or Sheila. It was that's what I grew up in.
yeah.
So, so yeah, so uh the whole podcast thing, she had been offered podcasts before, but really the whole podcast thing happened, or with me and her, happened because she had done a podcast and she had me come on as a guest to talk about Mothership Connected. And it wasn't even I didn't even have a book deal yet. We're talking like 4 or 5 years ago, 5 years ago. And she just, I said, you should do a podcast, man. And she said, well, if I do it, you have to be my co-host. And I had no intentions of being a co-host. I'm like, I can direct it. I'll be the guy behind it. She's like, no, I need you to be there. So that's how Apollonia Studio 6 happened. That's how it happened. And I mean, when I say that we made it happen, me and her made it happen because we had somebody who was going to do it with us. And they flaked at the last minute, how LA can be. And I just looked at her and I said, fuck it. We'd have already done all of this. Let's just see it through.
Step out on faith, right?
Yep, we
Yeah,
saw it through and it went on, now for 2 seasons. And we haven't filmed in about a year and a half, but we're talking about
yeah,
getting back. And because I mean almost daily, she or I get DMs or something from people saying, when is it coming back?
yeah.
So
People are
we're gonna
waiting.
get back on the horse.
Yeah, it's such a great show. Of course, I told you when you guys first started, I was, I started watching the show and following it. So yeah, we're waiting, bro. We're waiting on it.
We're gonna get it together. We're gonna get it together.
Yeah,
It's gonna come together. Yeah,
yeah.
gonna come together. So, so from out of that, it just like, doing the video on Jill, me working with Mickey Howard. Mickey was actually my mother was a mentor to Mickey when she was, 16 years old, about to go start singing with Side Effect.
Mhm.
That's when my mother met Mickey Howard. So,
Wow.
started working with Mickey. I might have probably started working with Mickey first. And then through Mickey, I met Shaka. And then, we realized our family connection between my mom and Shaka and Taka and all of that. So next thing I knew, I was doing, photos of Shaka, and then she wanted me to direct her video. I love myself. I did that. Um, I met Vesta through Mickey, and then I did her video dedicated and became really close to her until she passed away. And now I'm working with Bernadette Cooper's Climax, so that's going on now too. So you know,
It's
Shaka
just
calls me the
growing
diva.
and growing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just growing, and
Yeah.
Shaka calls me the diva whisperer. So
I love it.
I'm gonna take it. I accept.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Taking care of the women, man, that's a beautiful thing, man. It's rare to see in this business, and I wanted to, also, while I'm on the subject,
Mhm.
because I don't get to do this enough too, as well, to also extend the love to you, because as I mentioned, it's a rare thing to see in this business. But I know, amongst artists and entertainers and producers, and a lot of us and a lot of people in the circle, we can be difficult, and things like that, hard to deal with, or, scheduling is hard to do, all kind of stuff, things get in the way. But when you find true, real people like yourself in this, in this world of entertainers and, things like that, and artists, it's a rare thing. And when you come across it, man, you have to really say, thank you for being who you are. So when I see that with you, how you handle these women, I'm just like, man, 100%, bro. I love it.
I appreciate it, man. It's just been, for whatever reason, it's been a calling,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
whatever reason, it's been a calling. And for me to be able to work, the thing is that what blows me away sometimes is these women that I work with are people that I was a fans of. These
Yeah,
were women that I had their posters, when I was a teenager. I had their
yeah,
posters on my walls and things like that. So, I mean, I've had many people. I remember Jill Jones told me one time, she said, Seth, you manifested all of this. You manifested it. And so, I am a big believer, especially in recent years, of manifestation. And, the fact that somebody, people like Chaka Khan, who to my mother, as far as she was concerned, was kind of like a template of who she really looked at, like, I want that to be, I would like to pattern my career after Shaka, to Apollonia and Apollonia 6, Susan and Brenda, who are, I'm very close to. And even, I had a couple of years where I had a lot of conversations with Denise, with Vanity, before she passed away. So there was I do have to admit that there was a manifestation, I guess,
yeah.
in the whole thing. Me loving Climax and particularly loving Bernadette Cooper. And now, I work with Bernadette Cooper and she's one of my best friends. I talked to her this morning.
Yeah.
It's like, there is a manifestation. There is a manifestation that happens, and you are tasked with certain things, and even certain things that you don't want, but that's the plan. That's the universe's plan, for you. So
Yeah.
that's been kind of like how I've had to um, um, live in it, is that you're chosen to do certain things. You're chosen for certain. I mean, like, perfect example. I don't really talk about this much, but I'm the one that found Vesta's body
Yeah, I remember me and you
after
talked
she
about
passed
that
away.
privately. Yeah,
Yeah, and you know that is not something I could say that I wanted to do, but I remember uh, Mickey and some other people, saying to me that you were chosen to do that because you gave her dignity, because there's no telling, what that could have turned into because it was so unexpected. Um, and so, I look at those things that even with the stuff that's not easy, we're all chosen to walk a certain road and chosen
absolutely.
to be who we are to people and for people. So,
Absolutely.
mhm.
I'm surprised with you being born into music. You never did aspire to become a singer or a musician. I'm surprised at that.
Actually, I did.
Did
I
you?
did when I was younger, and
Okay.
I had a proposed record deal back when I was 19
Shut the front door.
with LaFace.
See, now, see, I'm learning something new about you. Tell me about this one now.
Okay.
Oh, deep
Back
breath.
back in my late teens, I was a part of me and a girl who was my best friend at the time. We had a duo, male female singing duo that we called Cherry Vine. We're talking like 87, 88.
Okay.
88, yes, 87, 88, 89, around there. We had recorded some demos, things like that. Really hadn't done anything, but this was like our dream at this time, where we were going to be this male female duo.
Okay.
Um, at the time, the girl that I was singing with, the place that she worked, there was a guy that worked there with her. That guy was Babyface's brother-in-law.
Mm.
Okay. Now, we're not talking about Tracy Edmonds' wife. We're talking first wife. The wife when he's struggling wife. Um, this guy was her brother. Babyface in LA had just gotten their label deal and were trying to put LaFace together. There were no LaFace artists out at the time. And one of the things that they wanted to do, they had a plan to do female solo, male, female duo. That was their plan. So at the time, the guys that were running their PR, or not PR, our A&R, were their cousins, Derek and Dwayne Ladd. They were twins. And Derek and Dwayne Ladd were scouting for artists for LaFace. Uh, the girl I sang with gave the brother-in-law our demo and our picture. We had done these pictures. We had done these black and white pictures like in my dining room, and gave him our picture and gave him our black and white. So about a month later, uh, the guy that she worked with called me and said, "Hey, this is how the record business is." He says, "Hey, I heard back from the Ladd twins at LaFace, and they want to talk to you, but they just want to talk to you. They don't want to talk to the partner. They just want to talk to you."
There we go.
So I'm like, I'm all like flustered, because I'm like 18. I'm 18, I'm insecure. I'm like, you know, I have to have her, even though I probably really didn't in reality, but in my mind I did.
Yeah.
So I'll never forget, I had another friend of mine who was a songwriter, girl by the name of Diane. I said, "Diane, will you go up over here with me? Because I don't know what they want to talk to me for, but LaFace wants to talk to me."
Mm.
So me and Diane went over this guy's house, and he was either both of the twins or one of the twins, but it was one of them. He had gotten on the phone. And they said, "We got your tape, we got your picture, and we're only interested in you. We're not interested in your partner. So we're interested in you being our male solo guy. But this is what we want to do. We want you to
Wow.
do. We want you to go back in the studio. We want you to record the demo by yourself, take her vocals off, record it just with you, and resubmit it by yourself."
Mm.
I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I'm freaking out because I'm like, I don't, you know.
Yeah.
So I didn't do that, but they were a little persistent because every once in a while, every couple of weeks, I would hear from the guy and he would say, "Hey, the twins want to talk to you. Hey, the twins have some demos they want to send to you. Hey." And so now keep in mind, I never had any actual interaction with LA or Babyface.
Mm.
This was all with the Ladd twins. And actually, I think that if I had had some interaction with LA and Babyface, maybe things would have pushed forward because of their relationship with Bootsy.
Right.
Okay. What many people don't know that Bootsy gave Babyface the name Babyface.
Mhm.
So I think that if I had been having some direct contact with them and them knowing, this is Mallory Franklin, the Parliament Funkadelic son, this is Boosie's godson, blah 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 blah, things may have happened differently.
True.
Anyway, what ended up coming up through that is I ended up going to, I think they were in Cincinnati. They were somewhere in Ohio. I ended up driving up to Ohio, me and my friend Diane, who actually had gotten a gig with the girl that was supposed to be their female artist, a girl that never came out. Her name was Sony. So Diane had gotten a gig as a background singer for Sony.
Mm.
Okay. I had went up and done like a test photo shoot, just me, and got they sent me home with some tapes, with some tracks. And basically, what they saw from me, which I was cool, was, I was going to be maybe like their Al B. Sure, because that's what was going on at the time. It was Al B. Sure, Tony Terry, and I'm light skinned and I'm young and I have all this curly hair on the top of my head. So I fit. So when it was time, contract time, I said, "Well, I have to have my lawyer look at it." He's like, "You 18." I'm paraphrasing, but it's like, "You got to have your lawyer look at it." And I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, "You don't know where I came from. Look,
Yeah. Yeah.
we got a lawyer in the family. I gotta have my lawyer look at it."
Straight up.
Well, people weren't as excited to talk to me.
I wonder why.
Okay, when it was like, I need to have my lawyer look at the contract.
That-
And they never, and this is the thing, is I never actually got the contract, but it was just, we're gonna prepare the contract. Great. I'll have my attorney
Mm,
look at it.
mm,
What?
mm.
You 18, what you know about attorneys? I'm from P-Funk.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Wow.
that didn't happen. But what did happen out of that was the first artists that came out on LaFace were Damien Dame,
I
a male and
remember.
female duo.
I was thinking that when you said it, I was like, they did eventually do
So
it.
Damien Dame ended up
Yeah.
coming out. Damien Dame was the position that Cherry Vine, myself and the
Mm.
girl I was singing with, auditioned for.
God, that's insane.
Yeah. So, but I look at it like considering how things kind of went down,
Yeah.
some of the earlier LaFace artists,
Yeah.
it may have been a blessing. I
Yeah.
don't know. It may have been a blessing. I mean, I could have ended up like Sony, which is, they did all this recording on Sony and they were getting ready to have her go out on tour and her record never came out.
That's it. Yeah.
So, it's just like, you know, and when I tell people that, I've had people say, "Do you ever regret it?" And they have to understand that we're not talking about Tony Braxton, TLC LaFace. We're not talking about the LaFace, the iconic LaFace. They hadn't become the iconic LaFace.
Right.
They hadn't become. So I would have been a part of that very first little roster of artists that really got nowhere.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that roster of artists got nowhere.
Yeah.
Damien Dame had that one hit. Sony never came out. I probably may have never come out,
Yeah.
or if I did, it may have just ended up not anything. And that's not anything against Babyface in LA because I love Babyface in LA.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just I think that pocket of artists, that very first little three, four artists that came out on the face, you know,
We
they
saw
did.
what happened to
Yeah, we saw what happened.
him. Yeah, it's no
And I
secret.
would have been one of those. It's
Yeah.
not like I would have been, you know,
Lost in the shuffle or something.
right. It
Yeah.
wasn't like that. I wasn't going to be, like the success that they started having
Yeah.
92, 93,
Yeah.
94. We're talking about 1989 or 90. So they were still a couple of years off of becoming the iconic LaFace
Yeah.
that we know it to be.
Yeah.
So,
Who,
yeah, so
who,
that was my foray in the music business.
yeah, I was gonna say I'm now I'm gonna have to when I get to see you next time. I'm gonna have to see if you have you seen something. 'Cause I'm like I never heard this brother sing before.
This is the thing. I can carry a tune. I'm not the greatest singer. I mean, especially when I have a singer like my mother as my mother. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
Um, but I mean, I can sing. I'm decent. But my whole real confidence came in the fact that I could dance.
yeah,
I
yeah,
could dance my ass off. And that was something that I was confident in. And even in the way that some things were kind of being presented to me, it kind of was presented to me like that was going to be my strong suit. We'll worry about the rest of it.
yeah, yeah.
That would be my strong suit. But it just didn't happen. And like I said, it never got to the place where I was dealing with LA and Face. It
Yeah.
never got to that. It was me dealing with, people that were working for them.
Yeah.
Things might have been different.
That's true. That's
Things
true. You
might have
just
been
never
different.
know.
Yeah, if I was dealing with them directly.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Tell me this: what be away from the Parliament Funkadelic canon? What are some of your favorite artists or groups that you like to listen to on your spare time or free time?
Everything that I listen to is pretty much 80s,
Yeah,
some 90s. I was a 80s Prince aficionado,
yeah. Even still today, that's what you go back and listen to.
even still
Yeah,
today.
yeah. I'm with you on that, man.
I was an 80s Prince
Yeah,
aficionado.
yeah,
Like everything, all of it really, but everything definitely up until Love Sexy, even though I did like some of the Diamonds and Pearls stuff.
Yeah,
But everything up to Love Sexy, count me in. I had it.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I was into all of the offshoots. I was into, the Time and the Family and Apollonia 6 and Vanity 6 and when Wendy and Lisa went solo
yeah.
and all of that stuff. And then the other part of me, what I was very much into uh, a lot of Euro pop. I was into like
Okay.
Culture Club and Duran Duran
Yeah, yeah.
and the Thompson Twins and Kate Bush and
You ever get into like ABC or Scritti Police?
yeah,
Yeah,
Poison Arrow, ABC,
yeah. Human League,
yeah, Human League,
yeah.
all of that
Good
stuff. I
stuff.
love all of that stuff too.
Yeah,
That is stuff that I was really, really into.
good
I
stuff.
wasn't into
Always.
like popular stuff like the Janet stuff, the Jam and Lewis and all that. But really, uh, uh, all the Minneapolis sound stuff, Jesse Johnson, Tamara and the Scene, the Jets, which a lot of people don't realize the Jets was Minneapolis.
Hmm.
Uh, um, that was really the stuff that I loved.
Yeah,
And then the Euro pop stuff I really, really loved too.
yeah, yeah. A lot of that stuff, man. It's timeless, man. Even still today, you listen to it, it's like, man, it still sounds like it came out yesterday.
Yep.
Some good production, good recordings, man. I tell you.
Man, when you listen to some of that stuff, like the Power Station and
Oh man, heck yeah.
stuff is
Robert
great.
Palmer and yeah,
Stuff is great.
yeah, with them powerful drum production. Now
Mhm.
Rogers and producing that stuff. Yeah, powerful stuff, man.
That 80s, all that 80s Madonna, that Like a
Mm-hmm.
Virgin and Burning Up and all of that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That was that was my stuff.
Yeah, still sounds good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was my stuff. And I like 70s stuff too, like some of the Donna Summer stuff
yeah,
and Sylvester and some of the disco stuff. I was a
yeah.
big Kiss head when I was a little boy.
Is that right?
So I
Okay.
bought like, yeah. So I bought like, I had like Love Gun and Live 2 and
Okay.
Dynasty and all of that. Yeah, I was a big Kiss head. And
Okay, that I didn't expect.
oh
Okay.
yeah, I was big. And what excited me was that Parlet was on the same label
Hmm.
Kiss. So my mother always would bring me stuff from
Okay.
Atlanta.
Yeah,
She
yeah,
could get all these great promotional items, and she knew I was a Kiss freak. So,
yeah, that's cool.
she would always bring me, posters and albums and all that kind of stuff. Some of that
Yeah.
stuff I still have.
I was just going to ask, did you hold on to any of that stuff?
Some of it
Yeah.
I've got. Yep, some of it. But yo, yeah, I was big, big Kiss head.
That's so cool.
Yeah, in the 70s. Yeah.
Yeah. Who did the artwork for the Mothership Connected book, the front cover there?
That's Tim Stevens.
That is dope.
Yeah, an artist by the name of Tim Stevens. I knew of Tim's work. Actually, he had done some
Yeah.
stuff before that I saw online, and I contacted him, and he had actually done some portraits of Parlet for me years ago. We're talking like maybe 10 years ago. He had done some portraits of Parlet for me, and so then it was time when it was time to do the whole book cover thing. And myself and the publisher were throwing it around. How are we going to do? What are we going to do? Because the thing was I didn't have one image that represented the book. I didn't have just one image, and they weren't particularly keen on doing multiple images on the cover, multiple pictures.
Right.
Meaning photographs.
Right.
And so, I said, then we need to take it back to the old school and we need to do something that would be done if it was Parliament Funkadelic album.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I said, I'll contact Tim because I knew he did beautiful work. I had seen him, do work on Parlet, so I knew that he could do realistic beautiful work. And then they kind of took that, and then their elements, like these beams, are these are all from I want to say Kid. It was like the color scheme of either Kid, Funkadelic, I don't think it was Cosmic Slop. I think it was Tales of Kid Funkadelic.
Okay. I can
Uh,
see that. Yeah.
yeah, these were that, and then of course the galaxy behind is Parliament.
Mm,
So it was mixing elements of Parliament, elements of Funkadelic, and the
mm,
women in the stars are the One Nation stars from the flag. So you know
love
we
it.
yeah, so we kind of came up with something, and I worked with Tim very closely as far as the costumes they would be wearing and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah,
Very cool. I love it, man. I love it.
yeah. So man, yeah, I got the okay from the publisher, and then their graphics department did the logos, which of course are very Parliament Funkadelic, like the
Hmm.
logos from the group, and
Hmm.
we just really wanted it to scream. And I think that, just like P-Funk album covers, it's that thing that when it's sitting on the shelf, it gets your attention and you're like, what is that?
Yeah.
You know? And that's what
Yeah.
you want. That's what
Yeah.
you,
Yeah. Your eye just gravitates right to it because all of the colors and everything. So yeah.
yeah. Like,
Yes.
what is this?
Yeah. I
So,
have no doubt, my brother, man. It's definitely been a conversation piece for the last several decades, and I know when I first met you several years ago, it's been the talk around the people in the know that that you've been working on this book tirelessly
yeah.
for several years. So
Yeah.
we just been patiently waiting, and then when we see you in public, we say, "Hey Seth, how far are you along?"
Mhm.
And the
It
day
was,
is finally come. It's seeing the
yeah.
light of day, in basically less than a month at this point. And
Yeah.
I want to stop and say, I'm so proud of you. I'm happy for you, and I know for a fact that mom is smiling down at you as well, and all the beautiful ladies that are involved in this book. I know that they're just, I know that they're just all totally with it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So I'm totally excited about this book. So I can't wait to get my copy in my hand,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. So make sure you at the book suit and bring it. And
I
uh,
will be there. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, if you don't mind telling my viewers about the next date, the first date, and then if you also where they can find you on your Instagram, Facebook, or any handles that you'd like to share as well.
okay. As far as Instagram, my personal kind of all inclusive is Seth a Million, Seth a million. And then the book has an Instagram, official Instagram at Mothership Connected. There's also on Facebook, Seth Neblett, Mothership Connected has a official page on Facebook as well. I'm on TikTok at Seth Neblett. Mothership Connected has a TikTok, even though it's not a lot going on with that yet. And then as far as book tour, let's see, I'll be in LA at Book Suit on October 1st. I will be in Miami on, hold on. I will be in Miami, believe it's October 16th. I'll
Okay.
be in Miami at Books and Books. I will be in Atlanta at Acapella Books on October 19th, I think. I'll post all of that stuff on my social media. So, but I think that that's the way it goes. I think I'm in Miami, October 16th at Books and Books, Atlanta at Acapella Books, October 19th, and then there are also um, things that are being set up, New Orleans in November, Memphis, Nashville, Detroit, and then they're also working on possibly Chicago, DC, Minneapolis, New York. So, and
Making them
and
rounds.
and as I speak about that, my GoFundMe, I have a GoFundMe going on right now for this book tour, The
Okay.
Thin Fire Strikes Back, 2025 book tour, because a lot of these book events, only very few can financially contribute to travel, to lodging, things like that. So I'm pretty
Okay.
much doing a lot of it on my own. So
Okay.
I did start a GoFundMe, and there's different levels to it. As a matter of fact, if you pledge $100 or more, you get a autographed copy of Mothership Connected by me, and you'll get it early because I actually have some authors' copies that I'm
Okay.
giving out. People are getting their books like in early September. Some have already gotten them in late August, um, just to cover some of those expenses because I'm determined to go out here and do it. And I've basically just told the publishing company, I'm like, hey, if I can get into these places that probably before this book had no interest in really hearing these women's stories, now that the door is open for me, I'm walking through it. So
I heard that.
anything anybody can do to help, if it's $5 or it's $500, whatever, it helps fund one more book tour, one more book stop.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm definitely going to contribute, and I'm glad you
Oh,
mentioned that to all of my viewers as well. And I will be there on the first, man, to give you a big bear hug and a dap
right.
and just, smile and just tell you I love you, my brother, man.
All right. All right, man. Can't wait.
Yeah, so just thank you so much, man, my brothers, for coming on the show, talking about the new book. You guys, once October 1st starts, the ball is rolling. So stay tuned for more. Keep in touch, and go to his Instagram, Set the Million, Mothership Connected as
Yep.
well. The
Yep.
book is hot.
A
Book
lot
is,
of pictures. I was able to get a lot of pictures, guys.
oh man, see, unseen pictures.
I was
See,
able to get a lot of stuff in here, guys. Things that
oh, see, that's a cool shot of Miss Maya right there. You just turned.
things that oh, let me show you a really great one.
Okay.
Things that people just so you can kind of see the kind of greatness that is going to be in that. That's my
Wow.
Frankie Cash and Kush.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things, there's a lot of images in here that people have never, ever, ever seen.
That's a lot of digging there.
And
Yeah.
there's a lot of great, really great, really great things
Oh
in this
yeah,
book that people
nice.
have never seen. So I think that
That's Santa Rose. That's Christmas, huh?
yeah, that was for the Black Echoes. That was the Black Echoes Christmas cover in
Okay,
1978. But
man, that's fire.
that particular shot is a shot that's never been seen before.
Hmm.
So there's
Okay.
some great, some
Okay.
great things. So,
I'm definitely looking for it, man. I'm standing by.
all right,
Well, brother Seth, man, it's been a pleasure and an honor. I thank you so much, my ladies and gentlemen. Seth Neblett in the house. Thank you so much for stopping through Digital Soul Presents. Get the book, ladies and gentlemen. Get the book.
all right. Thank you.
Oh, no problem, man. Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it to the fullest, man.
All
Thank
right,
you.
all right.
Good dude.